Carter, president of P.E.R.C. P.E.R.C is proud to bring you today Respect, Boundaries, and Consent, Navigating These Teachable Moments with Our Children. P.E.R.C, as you know, is Parents Encouraging Responsible Choices. We are an extension of the PTOs, and we appreciate all the donations that come to us from all the PTOs in support of this and all of our programming. You are more than welcome to come to our meetings. We meet the third Wednesday of the month at Dublin Central Office at 9:30. That's going to be next Wednesday, so you're all more than welcome to come. And when you leave today, please remember our survey that's out there too. By going on that, that helps us with our programming as well too. And please, if you like the program, please tell your friends. Send out some emails and so forth and connect with people about the programming today too. And then thank you for Dublin Schools for all their support and for helping with videotaping today and this evening as well. And thanks to the Abbey Theater and Brian, who's up in the box today. We appreciate this lovely space and help today. Also thanks to ACT, Nationwide Children's Hospital, Syntero, for all of their help, encouragement, and coming to our meetings and once a month with us too. Matt Macy has been a great support to us as well too. Please remember, next week, April 18th is Family Night, and you might have seen the flyer out here. There are great businesses that are giving some promotions for Family Night, and if you'd like to take one of those today, that would be great. But it's a great opportunity to be with your family. We don't have school the next day, so you probably won't have homework, so that's always good too. So it really should be a good quality family night. Let me get going about today's program. We're so excited to have Kristen with us. Kristen Torres of P.E.R.C is a wonderful speaker with us today. This is very important to note that Kristen meets with our students directly by giving presentations in our health classes. She also talks with teachers in communicating the best ways to touch base with our students about these important topics. Kristen Torres of P.E.R.C is a licensed social worker with a master's in social work, health emphases, and 19 years experience, 15 years in prevention and promotion. She is a graduate of both The Ohio State University and Ohio University. Go Bobcats. Kristen coordinates the Healthy Bodies, Healthy Future program at Syntero and has been teaching sexual health education and studying the issues surrounding sexual health for decades. She is a content expert. She is a content expert in sexual health and wellness, and is a guest lecturer on the topic each semester at The Ohio State University and Capital University. We're very lucky to have her here with us today, and let's all give her a warm welcome.
Thank you, Kathy. Good morning, friends. How are we doing today? Excellent. Don't do the math on how old I am, okay? I was thinking that. I was like, I probably shouldn't have said all those years, and then people do the math and think, oh. I just had this idea, maybe I look so young that you don't think I know what I'm talking about, right? Yes. So I'm happy to be with you guys today. Most of what my focus is in my work is really about healthy sexuality, and there are layers of healthy sexuality, much like layers to an onion. And one of the layers is really these conversations regarding consent, body autonomy, and how that relates to safe sexuality. So that's what we're going to focus on today. I have a lot of good information for you guys. If you have questions, ask them. Just raise your hand. Don't think this is so like, oh, we have to wait till the end and whatever. So no, just be like, hey, Kristen, I want to ask you something. Also, if you want to share some moments that you've had in your own world or situations, please don't feel like you have to self-disclose anything. As a social worker, I'm aware that people don't have to share what they don't want to share, but I want you guys to feel like this is helpful for you. I do have some audio-visual in the presentation. As we go through kind of the ages and stages, I'll show a corresponding video that's about 2 minutes long, just to not make you too bored with listening to my voice. But I will go ahead and get started. So let me get my clicky here. And so my program is called Healthy Bodies, Healthy Futures. We are a comprehensive sexual health education program designed to empower youth through scientifically based information. Now, I don't want to get too far on a tangent because I have plenty of things to talk about, but did you know Ohio is one of those states where information that's presented in health classes actually does not have to be medically accurate? And some of the information that is provided here in Dublin is actually not medically accurate. So when I go back into classrooms, oftentimes I'll have to come in and re-explain information, and they go, well, that's not what I was told. And I go, okay, I know, right, yeah, I can't do anything about anyone else's programming. I can just tell you what we do, which is teaching safe, correct information. I believe that information empowers young people to make good choices when they are ready to be sexual. I'm not interested in giving them fake information to scare them into not being sexual. I think that's wrong, okay? And it's against my code as a social worker, so I won't do that. So I think we provide really good education. We are funded by the Atom Board. When you vote for those Atom Board levies, thank you. It funds programs like mine from those levy dollars, and we've been around for almost 15 years. So this is a little bit about what we are guided by. There are 16 critical topics that the Center for Disease Control recommends are talked about related to sexual health. We cover all 16 of them in our middle schools and our high schools. We are one of the few programs that do so, and I'm very proud of that. And as you can see, we have a lot of learners. We have 45 schools. We're in 7 school districts and 2 universities. And I'm tired, and it's almost the end of the semester, and we are schlepping from school to school in an effort to really do some good work with our young people. So I do have to give a bit of a trigger warning. We are going to talk about sexual assault situations. I am going to use the word rape. I am going to use the word sexual assault. I am going to talk about different types of assault, not in depth, but for people who have been sexually assaulted, which I know from the statistics at least includes a number of us here in this audience, this information can be triggering and upsetting. So if at any point you need to step out, feel free to do that. I want to be sensitive to that. Okay? We also give this trigger warning in our presentations at school, and you would be amazed how many students self-disclose later that they had been assaulted. I had a young girl in my middle school class just 2 days ago. I was 8 when I was raped by my uncle, and so thank you for giving me the warning that we were going to be talking about rape today. And you know, I die inside a little, and on the outside I go, thanks for sharing that. Are you in counseling? Can I help you? Can I refer you for services, right? So consent. Consent is a big word. It seems pretty black and white. It's actually fairly nuanced. It's a fancy word that means giving permission to cross someone's boundary. And it has become a divisive buzzword. I engaged in a conversation with a stranger at the doctor's office the other day, and he asked me, what do you do for a living? And as soon as I say sexual health educator, people are like, oh, well, let me tell you all these things. And I'm like, great, because I've never had this conversation before, cool. So he launches into, we talk a little bit about consent, and he launches into, well, I just feel like I can't even talk to a woman anymore because, you know, I don't want her to then say that I had sexually harassed her. And I was like, take a deep breath. Okay, here we go. I'm like, hold the phone, friend. We understand when we're being inappropriate, and we understand when we're not, but maybe we don't. And I only have 5 minutes before this appointment, so let's make it quick. Let's do a little quick education with you, all right? Because for many of us, we never really learned about consent until after the fact. Nobody ever told me that somebody had to have my permission to touch my body in a sexual way, okay? Now, when I was little, yes, I got the message, good touch, bad touch, who's allowed to look at your private areas, things of that nature, bathing suit place coverage. But otherwise, no one ever gave me that conversation. How about you guys? Anybody have, like, in-depth conversations about consent, sexual boundaries? No? Right, yeah. If they bought you a nice meal and it was a good date, maybe at the end of the night you had to do the sexy time things, all right? That's my understanding anyway as I was growing up and coming up. And that was reflected in a lot of the media that we saw as well. So different ages and stages clearly require different conversations, and so we'll cover that a little bit today as well. So What we're doing is definitely not enough. These are statistics from victims of crime through the U.S. Department of Justice and the Department of Health and Human Services. So this is the saddest point of the presentation, so I'll give you that warning now. This is what we're looking at. 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 20 boys is a victim of childhood sexual abuse, okay? Now, this information is based on what's reported. How many more do you think go unreported, right? And childhood sexual assault can be dicey to define. Everybody defines it a little bit differently. So when we're looking at statistics, please keep that in mind. Over the course of their lifetime, 28% of youth 14 to 17 have been sexually victimized. Okay, that's shocking. This is really important to me to convey to you today. 7 to 13 is our hot zone. That's the time when children are most vulnerable. Why do you think 7 to 13 is that age range where they become very vulnerable? Very trusting, absolutely. Anything else? Their communication skills aren't honed, that's correct, right? By 7, how many young people have already had conversations about, especially sexual body boundaries, right? We wait till too late often, right? And also we look at 7, 8, 9, 10, that's puberty zone, right? And I know you guys think puberty, that's early for 7, okay. I had a 9-year-old start her period the other day in one of my classes, so I'm like, oh, we're mature, our bodies are maturing younger, our minds are maturing very slowly. So that's also that hot zone of puberty that can be tough as well. And then finally, 90% report it was a perpetrator that they knew and they knew very well. So this idea of stranger danger, wrong, okay? This idea of stranger rape, wrong, okay? We also have to quit calling it date rape, by the way, okay? I want you to start calling it acquaintance rape, because date rape makes it sound cute in some kind of way. Or somehow you were asking for it because you were already involved in a date situation with someone, right? This is about someone that they know perpetrating against them. So clearly, you guys have been paying attention to the news. We know that consent is a conversation. I will never forget looking at my Facebook the day that the hashtag #MeToo went viral, and seeing so many of my friends and people that I love in my world talking about their own personal sexual assaults. And that's tough, you know, and it really is focused on women. 9 are perpetrated against our women, okay? So it does focus on us, but it also, you know, if we think about teaching our young people to be accountable for those body boundaries, the conversation crosses all biological sex barriers. And we don't want to look at men and boys as enemies, right? They are part of us. They are part of our fight, and only through education with our adult male friends, with our young men, with our little boys, can we really make a difference. And by the way, in preparation for this, I watched a lot of videos and read a ton of articles, and it was amazing to read a little bit about the court case with Bill Cosby, how still, even after he copped to, yes, I drugged them, and yet, how it was this idea of like, well, that's not a bad thing. I gave them some Quaaludes to, you know, make them feel good, and then, you know, I had sex with them, and that's just what you did. So we have to understand the frame that we look through is different, and it's different now than it has been for sure. So speaking of, consent was not something we learned, right? Who remembers Pepe Le Pew? Yeah? Can somebody tell me a little bit about like the storyline with Pepe Le Pew? Anybody remember? Chasing the cat, right? And why didn't the cat want him? Yes. He stunk, right? He was a stinky skunk, right? And he was always emanating his stinkiness behind him. So he really wanted this cat, right? So he would grab and squeeze and kiss the cat and, I love you, love you, love you, love you, my love, you know. And the cat's always like, oh. Okay, what's that cat's body language say to us? Don't touch me, get your paws off of me. Yet, this is a cartoon that we often watched, right? And then we take in these little insidious messages that say, if somebody's crossing my boundaries, even though that makes me uncomfortable, I have to still let it go on because that's what they want from me. And I know that seems like a reach sometimes. Oh, Kristen, you're being dramatic, right? But little things add up. All right, we did learn that sex equals love. Who remembers more than words? I won't sing it today. Maybe I will, no. Let's see. Say that I love you is not the words I want to hear from you. It's not that I don't want you or not to say, but if you only knew how easy it would be to show me how you feel. What are we talking about? Sex, the end, right? So we learned sex equals love here. And stalking is super sexy. Okay, every breath you take, I'll be watching you. Now, I love Sting, and I loved this song for sure, but kind of a terrifying message, right? And in retrospect, Sting has spoken to this. And, you know, of course, again, the frame that we view it through is definitely very different. So, oh, boy, the movies from the 80s and 90s, super problematic. These are all 80s movies, actually, so Porky's. What, just from looking at the poster, what might be my issue with some messages in Porky's? Yeah, what have they done here? Peeping Toms, right? They've drilled a hole into the girl's shower. So let's see. Porky's is a heartwarming tale of soliciting prostitution, indecent exposure, extortion, and watching naked women without their knowledge. Okay, great. Okay, what else? Let's see. And then they had to bring it back. They were like more watching naked ladies without their consent. This clearly sells tickets for us, right? 16 Candles. Oh, Jake Ryan, right? The heartthrob. He was the cutest boy ever. So this scene speaks to a supposedly hilarious subplot in which a drunk and unconscious girl is passed from one boy, her boyfriend, to another boy, the nerd, and then raped without her consent, clearly. She's out cold, and he says, here, you can have her now. Okay? Now, first of all, when a friend sent me this in an email, I was like, that's not true. You're being dramatic, right? So, of course, I'd have to watch it, and then I was like, oh, is this happening? It's real. Yes. Okay. All right. And then Weird Science. By the way, John Hughes, love him. Love, love, love. But a lot of problematic messages, John. So Wyatt and Gary create their own female who's godlike, but she's only there to serve their needs and at their beck and call. And her goal is to get them sex, right? They want to meet somebody, they want to have sex. That's her whole goal. So there's also this weird like subtext in here that somehow Gary and Wyatt are owed sex because they exist and they want it to happen. Okay, well, I want a lot of things, but I don't get them just because, right? So I think if you think that you're owed sex because you're a nice person, that's like a great red flag for that you're not actually that nice after all, right, as a human. And then finally, this is like the worst offender of all, reading some of the text about these Revenge of the Nerds movies. Do you guys remember these as well? Yeah. All right, so Revenge of the Nerds. The heroes of the story end up using a system of hidden cameras to watch girls change, but they don't stop there. They rock fundraisers by selling pies with photos of rival sorority girls' breasts taken from their hidden cameras. They orchestrate panty raids, and in what can only be considered a textbook case of rape, Lewis seduces a sorority girl named Betty by pretending to be her boyfriend Stan because he is costumed. They engage in sex, and only does she realize after the fact that it is indeed not her boyfriend, but this nerd. And because the sex is good and pleasurable for her, she goes, oh, that's okay. Okay? So this is rape culture. What rape culture means is a culture in which rape and sexual violence is both pervasive and normalized. We get these ideas of this is normal and okay. So in some ways, we can't help the frame we see things through because it's already been distorted by this, right? All right, so what can we do? Enough of the sad things. Let's talk about what we actually can do. We have to start earlier. I have parents ask me all the time, what's the magical age? What's the magical age? Okay, there is no magical age. We can start early before students are ready to learn even about sex. It is really about their context of their own body autonomy and having that personal body space, right? So we are talking about boundaries of they exist, we make them, and they can change, okay? So that's a really good messaging to give around those personal boundaries. So everyone gets to decide what they're okay and what they're not okay with. And these messages, again, are things like, I want to borrow that toy that you're playing with. Can I borrow it? Yes, you can. That's consent. We don't have to talk about penises and vaginas to discuss consent, right? So we can give these simple messages to young people. We want to be specific. I can't say enough how important it is to teach your young people the actual name for their genitals. It is a vagina. It is a vulva, right? It is a penis. It is testicles. When your young people have you use names like foo-foo and vajayjay and cookies and your pocketbook, that actually doesn't give them the body autonomy they need. It teaches them shame and embarrassment about their bodies, that you're embarrassed too about your body. And should anything ever happen to them, my best friend runs an organization in Athens County that helps survivors of sexual assault that are children. And if they don't use the correct words to report to the police, it becomes very difficult to prosecute that. So if they say, Grandpa touched me in my pocketbook, that's not usable, okay? That's not an offense that we can punish Grandpa for. So using those correct names is really, really important in keeping our young people safe. Also, you know, it makes you sound stupid. Quit doing it. Sorry. Like, when I hear my adult female friends talk about their vajayjays, I'm like, you're 40. You can say vagina. Like, that is A-okay. Not a dirty word, friends. Not a dirty word. And then finally, teaching nonverbal communication as well. So consent is more than just verbal. It's more than just yes and no, right? It's about facial expressions and body movements. Let's go back to that cat and Pepe Le Pew. You know, the cat's like, okay. That message tells me, stop doing it. That's uncomfortable, right? Kids need to know how to interpret both forms of those things, the verbal and the nonverbal. I'm sorry I couldn't get these to click in one at a time. The slide made me go crazy, so I apologize. So the 4 steps of consent, okay? Consent involves a couple different things, and I'm going to ask you guys about these later, all right? So pay attention. The 4 steps are ask, okay? Can I borrow the Barbie that can I play with the Barbie that you're playing with, okay? Answer, no, okay? I listen to that answer. Okay, you said no, and then I respond respectfully. Okay, that seems pretty easy. And my respond respectfully might be like, wow, you're really selfish with that Barbie. Right? That's okay. It's okay to be annoyed that somebody said no. It's just not okay to cross that boundary, right? Makes sense, okay? So ask, answer, listen, respond respectfully. We have to encourage kids to practice those steps. And the best way they can practice is with us doing the same 4 steps. I'm going to say this many times during the presentation, but young people learn what they live. And if they see you modeling that behavior of consent, that is much stronger than any one-time message you're going to give them about consent. Be that trusted adult. Ask, listen, believe, be open, okay? If they know they can't come to you, they won't. If I can give you one message about high school students, they don't want to talk, okay? And I know you already know this, but if they ask you something, let's say it's about sex, and you say, why are you asking? What are you doing? That's it. We're done with the conversations. You are no longer that trusted adult person. The things they ask me would blow your mind, okay? And they should be asking you. You're their parents. You're their important people. But I understand that parental relationship changes the dynamics. I'm a stranger. I'm a stranger who's a trusted adult person, which is good for them. They need that. So sometimes it can be hard to talk to you. So I want you guys to start thinking about, I'm going to ask you about this later as well, who is another trusted adult person in your world that if your kid couldn't come to you, it would be okay to go to them? Is that Mrs. Roberts? Is that your sister? Is that an uncle? Is that grandpa? Okay, think about who that person might be. And then finally, again, modeling consent is the best way that we can show young people through practice. So this was super interesting to me, and I actually just put this in last minute. found this great video on YouTube, and I had actually never thought about some of these things. So to me, this is not hard and fast rules because I didn't find enough science to support all of these, but I thought these were interesting. They gave me a cause for pause. So the first one here is tickling and roughhouse play. So why might this be a way that adult people could undermine the messages of consent with tickling and roughhouse play?
You'll say no, it just turns into, oh, you don't believe me.
Yes, perfect.
We're just having fun.
Yeah, right. No doesn't actually mean no, right? Ha ha ha. And as benign as that seems, you got to remember, little kids, this is it. They're experiencing the world through every message that they get. So when we're tickling and they say, no, stop, and we go, oh, you know, not that I'm telling you not to tickle your kids, because I think playing with your kids like that is so important to create that bond. But it is about is the minute that your kiddo says no, you stop, okay? And oftentimes they'll come back and they'll say, no, mommy, keep tickling, or keep putting my toes in your mouth, or keep eating my feet, you know, all those cute, silly things that we do with them. That's okay, all right? So they say stop, you stop, and then they go, no, no, keep doing it, and you go, okay, right? So we just want to teach them that no actually means no, and that no can stop uncomfortable behaviors, okay? Contradicting their feelings. This was also interesting. So let me give you an example. Your kid says to you, I'm hungry. And you say, no, you're not. You just ate. Oh, Mom, I'm cold. No, you're not. It's hot in here. Mom is sweating, right? I'm tired. You just got up from a nap. You just slept for 2 hours, right? And I understand why we do those things because we go, that's not true. But then we sort of give them the message that they shouldn't trust their basic instincts or feelings in that, right? So the better thing to do is to ask an open question, okay? So a kid says, I'm hot, right? And you say, oh, Mom's cold, okay? How do you feel hot? What feels hot on your body, okay? Tell me about it. And then let's take your jacket off if you feel hot, right? Okay? The eating, well, Mom wants to remind you that you did eat about half an hour ago. So are you hungry in your tummy? Or are you just feeling bored right now and you want a snack? Because Mom does that sometimes too, right? Late at night. Let's not talk about that. Okay. So yes. So we want to sort of like ask those open-ended sort of questions. Okay. The next one, forced hugs and kisses. Now there have been lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of articles that have come out recently about not forcing our kids to hug when they don't want to. So how many of us have read at least one of those articles? Okay, fantastic. Is that a hard pill to swallow? Yes and no. Anybody else? Yeah?
So I kind of found that it wasn't, my daughter felt that way, but it wasn't towards my husband and I. It was towards like grandpas or friends
Okay.
or grandmas or, you know, and so we would do, like, we let her decide, you know, you want to do a high five, fist bump, whatever.
Awesome.
And now, as she's like, so that was okay with everybody.
Yeah.
I sent that article out that went through like
Yeah,
Facebook or
good,
whatever.
yes.
I actually was always like, oh, just talk, you know.
Yeah,
like,
just, yeah.
But then I was like, oh, okay, like she's legit here.
Yeah.
And now it's like, you know, 2 or 3 years later, she's coming into where it doesn't matter anymore. Like she's okay with hugging, but I think she had to come to that herself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. And we have to think, sometimes grandmas and uncles and aunties, we don't see them for months and months at a time. And for a kid that's like 3 or 4, that's like a lifetime. I haven't seen you in a year, that's a third of my life, you know? And they are strangers to them. You know, and how often do we want to run up to strangers and throw our arms around them? Right? So it is okay. And being rude is not the worst thing ever. You know, having a family member think, well, that was rude. I'm sorry that you feel that way. If you want to talk to me about it later, why it's important, we can do that, right? It's not the end of the world. It's A-okay. But we have to teach them that if they don't feel comfortable, they don't have to go against that to touch an adult person. Because again, remember, kids are learning through every single experience that they have, right? When they're born, they are, you know, the tabula rasa, the blank slate. I learn through experiences. That experiential learning is important. And then finally, the unquestioned respect for elders. Now, I like being respectful, clearly. I like when kids are respectful to me in the classroom, which sometimes doesn't happen. And I would like people to raise respectful young people. That's super important. But when we blindly say they are elders, they are older, you must always respect them, always defer to them because they are adult people, that's another kind of dangerous message that we give them. Because oftentimes, if someone's going to perpetrate, they're going to be an elder, right? So if we defer always to those people, that can be problematic. So I think it's important, especially as they get older, to have conversations about that respect for elders. What does that mean? But when they're young, teaching them that, you know, again, to be respectful, please, thank you, things of that nature. But if there's ever anything that makes them feel uncomfortable with any adult person, they come to you, or they come to that other trusted adult person to talk about it, okay? Anything else about these that you guys want to share or ask questions? We doing okay so far? You guys still with me? Yeah? Okay, fantastic. So some young people are learning about consent, and sex education, much like my program does, in schools that is comprehensive and inclusive is really important. So do I see myself reflected in the curriculum? Is it including me? Do I see my face in the slides? And does it talk about consent? You know, sexual health education is more than just here's a condom and it keeps you safe from STIs. Any questions, right? It's so much more than that. So we have learned in the past many years that adolescents are engaging in more relationships that are violent, whether that is physically violent or emotionally violent. We're seeing 1 in 3 teenagers in what we would consider an unhealthy relationship in high school. 1 in 3. So schools are now doing programming around healthy relationships. Imagine that. We should be teaching that in school. Because again, not to get off track, but how many of us learned about having healthy relationships from our parents? Anybody see that modeled to them? Okay, a couple of you guys. How many of you guys learned what not to do in a relationship from your parents? Right? Okay. How many of us had conversations from anyone else in our world about how to have a healthy adult relationship? Okay, a couple of you guys? Good, excellent. The rest of us were left to 80s and 90s movies, right? And this is the fallout from it. Okay, so, yes?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is the whole dating thing. I don't know if today there's as much dating. If you go to a party with a group of people, and you might hook up, and it might not be a connection, and the next day you're on to somebody else. I don't know how that whole is today. As opposed to getting asked out to go somewhere and get to know the person, that whole respect, there's something there.
Yeah.
It's just more casual, I guess.
And social media doesn't help with that because it gives us a false sense of knowing someone.
Verbal communication.
Absolutely. Yes, that's true. And so we talk about that in our classes, and we talk about a formulation of those relationships. I don't know if you can see really tiny there at the bottom, loveisrespect.org. I have some handouts for you guys out at our Syntero table. That's one of the resources that's listed there. That teaches us all about how to have healthy relationships. There's great engaging quizzes that they can take to see if they're in a healthy relationship, which I know that sounds funny, like a Cosmo quiz that you fill out, you know, when you're in the hairdresser's chair, but it actually is really great and helpful, and it's where I get my dating violence curriculum from. So it is vetted, it is evidence-based, so it's a really good website. They also have a text-to service. If you text Love Is to 22522, you can actually talk to a counselor, someone like me, about relationships and how to end ones that could be unhealthy. So that's an awesome service. I tell that to all my students. Thankfully, the interwebs, as scary as they can seem as parents, are full of really good information as well. So, yes? Loveisrespect.org. So Love is Respect is all together. Yep, you got it. And there are a number of really awesome books out there, if people still read. There are a lot of great books out there, and online resources. You guys will hear me talk about Amaze many times. I'll actually show this video soon. Amaze is a wonderful website that has videos for middle school and for the junior set, for 4 to 9-year-olds, called Amaze Junior, and on a variety of topics, not just consent. Things like puberty and body odor and where do babies come from. So these videos can actually assist you and give you those teachable moments so that you can have these conversations with your young people. So, okay, let's launch into our consent conversations at different ages and stages. This was a little daunting for me, my friends, because conversations to have over a lifetime are very different, and this is a lot of info, so I've tried to make this as brief and concise as possible. Okay, so let's look at the early years. We're talking about kind of pre-K time. So the first thing that we want to do is use clear vocabulary with kiddos, simple words like bodies, body space. Don't use a word like autonomy because that's difficult, but who owns your body? You do. Touching, what does that mean? Again, explaining those bathing suit places, right? Any place on my body that is covered by a bathing suit, nobody has an okay to touch except if you want to say, I had a friend yesterday who said, I tell my little boy, Mommy, Daddy, and Dr. Thomas. That's it. Okay, and when you're with Nana, and you're staying the night there, and Nana's giving you a bath, she's going to touch your penis when she gives you a bath, so that's okay, all right? Other than that, right? So it's about having these kind of express and open conversations, and again, use those proper body word terms, super important. We want to teach EQ skills. EQ means emotional qualities or emotional intelligence for young people. Perspective taking. How do you think that other person felt in the situation, right? Because that teaches empathy. We can really create consensual situations when we understand empathy. We feel for the other person. That person said no, it's about them, it's not about me, right? So again, that perspective taking. We want to teach kids it's okay to express hurt. So I was talking to another friend yesterday, and she was telling me about going to a funeral with her niece, and her niece had a black and blue on her face, and she said, what happened to you? And she said, oh, Mom got upset that I was crying at the funeral that we were at and about our uncle being dead, and she smacked me in the face and said, we don't do that. You be a young lady. You stop that. And I was like, good grief. And I was like, you know, I'm a mandated reporter, right? Does she live in Franklin County? So, like, wait a minute, I'm going to pretend you didn't tell me that it's after 5. No, just kidding. So it's important for young people to be able to identify those words and to talk about those feelings and those hurts and the upset, because if they can identify that in themselves, they can identify that in other people. So we want them to be able to use those words. And again, develop empathy for other people in the same situations as them. And then we want to, again, model consent and teach those skills. Some of consent is skill-based. Let's go back to those 4 steps. Anybody remember what those 4 steps to consent were? What's the first one? Ask. What's the second one? Answer. Very good. The third one? Listen and respond. Oh my God, A+, friends. Gold stars all around. Yes. So now we know the steps, and we're practicing those with our kiddos. Okay? So my first little video for you guys, just about 2 minutes long, is called Consent for Kids. This lives on YouTube, and you can access it really easily, and this just kind of gives us a little bit of, again, a teachable moment to watch with our kiddos together.
Consent for kids. This is you. Okay, it doesn't look exactly like you, but let's say it's you. This is your body, and you decide what you do with your body. No one else is entitled to tell you what to do with your body. Not your friends, not strangers, not adults you know. No one is entitled to decide what you do with your body, except you. That's called bodily autonomy, by the way. And that's what consent is all
Too big of a word. Don't teach them that.
Everyone is different. Some people love to hug, and some people hate hugs. And each person gets to decide what they're comfortable with. Can a hug-loving person just start hugging someone at random? Nope. they need consent. How do people know if they have consent? They ask. Would you like a hug?
Yes, I would. Can I hold your hand?
I'd rather not.
Okay.
If a person doesn't say yes,
Can I hug you?
then they haven't given their consent. It's really pretty simple. Ask for consent, listen to the answer. By the way, if a person bribes someone or threatens someone to say yes, that's not consent. Sometimes adults will try to tell a kid what to do with their body.
Go kiss Aunt Doris goodbye.
But the kid still gets to decide. No thanks, that makes me uncomfortable. I'll just wave goodbye. Some things kids can't consent to. They can't enter into legal contracts. They can't vote. And they can't consent to sexual stuff. Because they're kids. So if an adult does something that kids can't consent to, that's not okay. The adult is wrong, and it's not the kid's fault. And that's when it's most important to tell a trusted adult, like a teacher. Why? Because it's your body. And no one else is entitled to tell you what to do with it. Practice consent.
All right, so any feedback about that video? Questions, comments, concerns? Cute? Yeah, right? I know. This is my friend Denise. She's a plant in the audience. And we've been social workers for a very long time. And there have not been media elements like this to support our work ever. And so being able to have this is just so huge. So it's such an easy way to, again, we watch this together. We can even watch just a minute of it and then talk. And we can continue another day. It doesn't have to be belabored conversations. But again, I don't want you guys to think of these conversations as the talk, right? We do it one time and then we're done, right? The birds and bees and the babies and whatever. And questions? Okay, bye, right? Because I'm super uncomfortable with the topic. So it's really over time, we're laying the groundwork for them. Yes?
One of my sons, my youngest, very literal.
Mm-hmm.
So when, if I'm watching this, so there's an emotional connection. So if something sad happens, something bad, and to say, can I hug you? There's that, it's kind of that delay in what is natural. So what has been laid is a natural foreground if they do, and then you're telling them with family members, something that's already established, something that, it's natural to hug, not
Sure.
fast, before.
Sure, exactly. And again, this is, again, all about like the reframing. And it's okay to say, this is tough, because mom's natural inclination is going to be to want to hug you when you're sad, Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Here, let's, we want me to carry that over?
No,
You got it? Okay.
or just if you could read her.
Yes, okay, yes, I can. So my friend was talking about her son, and in situations where he becomes sad, and then that natural inclination that we have to like hug, he's seven, okay, so that's like second grade, is that right? Or 9, okay, 10? Okay, just turned 10. He's getting older by the moment, It's all happening, but with family members and yourself with the inclination to like want to hug when they're sad or hurt, and that's totally understandable to want to do. I think with mom and dad it can be a little bit of a different story, but again, you're having that conversation with them, right? And if at any time it would be uncomfortable for you to hug them, it's okay for them to say that even to you as mom. But with family members,
I guess showing him and watching this with
yeah.
him, and he's established a comfort. He's kind of already established that
Sure.
what's natural, when it's not.
Sure.
So now he will be afraid a little bit if he's now has to learn. Because there's that moment. There's like a moment where it's natural.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're like, oh, pause. And it just seems like it would change the dynamics of relationships as well. I'm not saying it's not a
Sure.
good thing.
Sure.
How do you communicate with your children?
And that's what
I said about the age, he's already
Sure,
learned. It's not
sure,
four, you know?
sure, absolutely. And again, I think that's what these teachable moments and watching something that's together and saying, hey, look, Mom went to this presentation and we were talking about consent all across the ages. And as you get older, sometimes people will want to violate boundaries. And so we need to have a conversation about how it may be natural to do these things, but we do want to add a little pause for that, especially as we get older and mature, and understand not everybody has great intentions. I'm sorry. I don't want you to teach and instill fear in your children, but I want you to make them mindful that not, I hate to squash the unicorn, but people aren't nice always, and they don't always have the best intentions. And some people's natural instincts may be to violate boundaries, and that's not okay, just because they've never been taught either. So I think you've probably done an amazing job with your kiddo, so now it's time to just amend a little bit and add a little bit more information. And it's okay to say as a parent, you know what, this makes me feel uncomfortable, okay? I want to just tell you to hug and to show all the things and to do what you need and to get what you need, but I have to add this extra layer as a way to keep you safe. So let's talk about it. How do you feel about that, right? Yes?
Oh, I don't know. Thank you.
It sounds very empowering for the kids.
Yeah.
How do you combine it then with being a parent of other areas in life? Because maybe for that, you're in charge of the whole body. But you as a mom, if you wanted to get in there and clean that garage, it's like, you're in charge in some areas, but in other areas, they're in charge of their own body. But
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, so they definitely are in charge of their own bodies and their reactions. But still, if I give you a task or chore to do, you be respectful of me and you do that. I'm not taking you with your body and physically throwing you into the garage. That would be a problem. But
Losing that parent, you know, but like, I don't know, being somewhat, I don't want the kids walking all over me, so I
Sure.
you know, turn it not to that.
yeah, understandable. And you know, that is really about, again, the way you say things and the way that you phrase them, and continuing to have, I think having an open dialogue with your kid doesn't necessarily take that away. It actually may empower you more and empower them more, and really strengthen your relationship with each other. It's okay to be honest. It's okay to be vulnerable. That does not make you weak as a parent. It teaches them vulnerability as well, and gosh, what a great message. So, yeah. Yes?
What feedback would you have? So my boys are in 6th grade.
Okay.
We just did dance club,
Okay.
where they are forced to dance with someone, 30 different girls in one switch partners.
Whoa. It's like middle school speed dating.
As I'm thinking about that, I mean,
Yeah.
they don't really have much consent over who they, I mean, it's like move down the line.
Yeah.
And there's some degree of, yes, they're learning something along the way, but it, you know, it just, all of this kind of made me think about
Yeah.
what feedback would you have for a
That's-
situation like that?
And so it's
they don't really-
required by.
No, it's not
Oh,
required.
okay.
It's
Okay.
just something that,
It's
you
just
know,
a fun thing.
a lot of
Yeah, okay.
Dublin families do.
Okay.
And
Every 6th grader, PTO, they all get to.
Goes through. Okay.
Yeah.
So in this frame of consent, I think explaining the situation, making sure that it's in, they know exactly what's going to happen, how, and talking to them ahead of time. Hey, look, I know for some people this could be an uncomfortable situation. Is it uncomfortable for you? Why? Why not? And ask them if they really want to be involved in it, and that you're going to be taking the hands of people that you have not met before, and maybe touching bodies with people that you have not met before. But it's within this, you know, kind of good, clean family fun. And if it doesn't feel like good, clean family fun to your kiddo, then maybe passing on that experience. So, but again, kind of that conversation that you have ahead of time with them, just to make sure that they're really cool and comfortable with the situation. So again, it doesn't make them better people in the world because we forced them to do this one thing that they probably will never remember that they even did in the first place. So checking in with your kid is okay, and checking in with yourself, right? You're having a moment of checking in right now. You're like, how do I feel about this, right? Is important as well. So that answers it okay.
About etiquette too, because I've been a parent in the room, and they have to greet them, say hello,
Okay.
eye contact. I think all
And so then that's sort of the teaching behind it is a yeah, and that may not be every kid's jam. So you definitely want to check in with them ahead of time. So thank you guys. Anything else about this one? Yeah.
Question.
Sure.
If you have a younger child who's not old enough to bathe him or herself
Mhm.
yet, thank you. Okay, sorry.
No,
If
you're
you
fine.
have a younger child who's not old enough to bathe him or herself yet,
Uh-huh.
and they're playing outside, it's summertime, they're hot, they're sweaty,
Mhm.
and it's time to come in for bath time. No, I don't want to take a bath. And they just dig their feet in, and they're not going to do it unless you put them in the bathtub. What is your advice in a situation like that?
So I think, again, the mom and dad come on. I'm going to explain to you why, it's important to take a bath and you're dirty, you've been playing. And so mom's going to ask you to come in to take that bath. And they're like, no, I don't want to do that. Okay, so now mom's choice is I'm going to put my hands on your shoulders and I'm going to guide you into the bathroom. And we're going to get into the bathtub and we're going to take a bath because, again, it's clean. You have to clean those bathing suit places. You're yucky and you smell. No, I don't want to. Okay, now mom's putting her hands on her shoulders and she's taking you into the bathroom. So you're like modeling this behavior of, even at the doctor's office, doctors should, I went to the doctor for some exam situations, and the doctor was great about that. Okay, now I'm going to put my hand on your thigh. Now I'm going to put my hand on your breast to do a breast. So you're literally telling them what's going to happen. So that sets the tone for adult people are going to tell me ahead of time. Nobody touches me without knowing what's going to happen. And in this situation, mom doesn't need to ask your permission to put you in the bath. Right, in this particular situation, right? So I think it's just about being open to those conversations, and I don't want you guys to feel like you're losing your power. You're not, I promise. This is empowering you in your conversations, and it's empowering your young people as well. So super good question, yeah.
I have a question about when kids start dating.
Yes.
Unfortunately, some in middle school, but
Yeah.
a lot of high schoolers. And so, boy or girl, doesn't matter if you want to hold that person's hand
Mhm.
on a date or kiss. So now you should ask.
You should
as
ask.
opposed to it
Yep.
happening naturally.
Yes. And so what I tell young people is it doesn't have to happen in that very moment. If you feel uncomfortable with that moment, talking to your partner ahead of time and saying, hey, look, here's what my body's boundaries are. I'm okay with hugging, kissing, holding hands. And if we're in a situation where I don't want to do that, I will then tell you. But right now, you can have standing consent with me to hold my hand. So kind of having those conversations ahead of time. Because in the moment, that can be tough. So before the date, and even as we start dating, we say to someone, here's what my rules are. And oftentimes I will say to them, we can hold hands, we can kiss, we can touch over the shirt, but not under the shirt. We can't touch over the pants or under the pants. Okay, and so it's about discussing that with people ahead of time, because you might be dating someone who's like, oh, we don't do any touching. And you don't even know that because you've never had that conversation. So again, it's about encouraging those conversations. And even my high schoolers, they'll be like, oh, that's not realistic. And I'm like, listen, talk in any words that you need to talk about, but do it before the blood leaves here and goes here. Because once the blood is here, then all bets are off. And those conversations tend to not happen as well. So does that make sense? Yeah? Is this reasonable, friends? Yeah? Okay. All right, fantastic. We're going to move on to the elementary years. So we're breaking down consent a little further than just yes or no now, okay? So we are really practicing that it's more than just talking and touching. There can be some gray areas, right? What asks us to keep a secret for them? What does that mean, right? Who is it okay to have secrets with and who isn't okay to have secrets with, right? So there's more kind of gray areas that may come up at this time. Questions like, do you have permission to share the information or not? And really, again, using our online resources to help us have some of these meaningful conversations with people. The critical thinking is now starting to turn on in their brain, and they're going, it's more than just A plus B plus C. Now we have these extra layers that we add on. So really important, please teach your kiddos to read the room. I know adults who can't do this. And it's really important in that nonverbal cues. So teaching them again, hey, look, we just saw this, you know, Pepe Le Pew cartoon. How do you think the cat feels? Why does Pepe feel like it's okay to keep squeezing the cat when the cat clearly doesn't want to be squeezed, right? So we're using those elements to explain some of those nonverbal cues. And then keeping that conversation going with teachable moments. Again, Amaze Junior for that 4 to 9-year-old set is really awesome. And those videos are going to help us kind of have some of those conversations as well. Okay? So my next video is called The Boss of My Body. And I think this is a pretty adorable one. And this would be really fun to watch together with your elementary kiddo. Yes, I think it's as adorable as they think it is. All right, so that's the boss of. I like in that video, we also talk a little bit about harassment in the beginning when the boys were kind of interfacing with each other and he stood up and said, hey, like this is not okay anymore. So I like that conversation. So any feedback on this, the boss of my body? Cute, yeah?
I mean, if I could do it again, I wish I gave my kids more lines. You know, I took for granted they would learn the lines, but like that little girl says, I'm getting out of here with, yeah, I'm going to be good to me. I mean,
Yeah.
you got to give them lines. You got to teach them those lines.
I hold the key to the safety of me. And again, learning little songs like this is a great way to internalize those messages, right? So I hold the key to the safety of me. And again, you saw, so back to that bike situation, that little girl felt that thing in her gut, right? And helping kids identify that. What is that? What does that mean? Why am I feeling that right now, right? Am I uncomfortable? Why? Why was that little girl uncomfortable with the bike race? Anybody remember what they said? dangerous, right? It was going to be dangerous. So she went, ugh. And even though the other peers were like, come on, probably, you know, in real life they would have been like, oh, you're being a baby, you're a chicken, you're whatever. Doesn't matter. We listen to us because I'm the boss of my body. I have the key to the safety of me, right? So it's a kind of good way to internalize that. So any other feedback? Because we're going to launch into the middle school days. And these can be also a little bit more tough conversations. Now, I'm in a fair amount of middle schools, and the range of information that they know goes from nothing to more than I know about certain things. They don't just have you now, they have everyone else. And normal adolescent development says in middle school days, I start to look out, right, to my peer group versus looking into my parents now. And that is totally normal maturational process. So they look to their peers for what they were once looked to you for, and they are learning from their peers. And when we talk about learning about sexuality, where else are they learning about sex from besides their friends and you? The internet, yes. And unfortunately, pornography replaces sex ed for a lot of young people. I met a friend this weekend, and she was telling me that she found pornography on her son's phone for the first time. He's an 8th grader, and she was freaking out. What do I do? Oh my God. I'm like, okay. Pervasive. We've all seen it. It's not going away ever, okay? And you cannot block your young people from every bit of content. What she said to me was, he accessed it through Snapchat. Did you know you could look at porn through Snapchat? And I was like, no, I actually didn't. Bad educator. There's too many things. I can't keep up with them all. Neither can you. So really we're addressing this by teaching them to look at it with a critical eye, okay? What are some messages in pornography that we don't want our young people to take away from it? I'm sorry? Misogyny. Heck yeah, right? Videos are often made with a particular perspective, and oftentimes it is misogynistic. That is correct. We are objects. My body is here for the pleasure of someone else. Now my body doesn't belong to me. I owe pleasure to someone else. Absolutely. What else? Life is all about sex. There's not even any emotional connections that we have. It's simply the recreation of doing this physical thing. Absolutely. Yes? Oh, right? There's no unintended consequences because we don't see what happens after that camera cuts. Absolutely. And so when I'm teaching middle schoolers about viewing pornography, I also want them to know that, you know, again, I never try to use scare tactics, but these can impact your future relationships by teaching you messages like you all just said. And those things stick and stay with us. So it isn't about barring them from every bit of adult content because you literally cannot do that. They are going to see it somewhere. It's about letting them know why you find it upsetting and difficult to know that they are taking in all of these really unhealthy messages about bodies and sexuality. And it's fake, okay? And when I say that to middle schoolers, they're like, no, it's people. I'm like, no. Okay. Right. So I get it, but those people are what we call actors who are being paid to engage. And they're like, what? What? They are? Yeah. Yeah. They might not have ever been told that, you know? So that's an important conversation for sure. So please talk about pornography with your young people, okay? That's a bunny trail, but okay. So this is a confusing time. Lots of incorrect information from very unreliable sources on the back of a school bus, right? We want to really start defining also sexual harassment and assault. How is assault different from rape? You know, we're talking about touching when we don't want to touch. A lot of people, when they think of rape, they think of some kind of penetration. That's not always true. We think about what are our body boundaries. Again, that conversation about what kind of touch is okay with a dating partner. What do you like? Are you okay holding hands? Are you okay kissing? Also, sharing your personal family values is vital. When I ask young people if they've had conversations with their parents about their values around dating and sex, Okay, now I know many of you are doing an awesome job, and I'm not calling you out by any means, but they're like, ribbit, you know, and so they may not have taken it in, but if you are a family who says, we wait, our religion, that we don't have sex when we're just initially dating someone, that, you know, so we have to have these more in-depth conversations. What are mom and dad's expectations for me? Okay, if you've never told them, they don't know. Don't think that they're just soaking it in, because literally they have no idea. So that's incredibly important. And then really back to that, emphasizing that trusted adult. Have you guys been thinking about it? Your trusted adult person, right? Who is that person that you're going to say to your kiddos, if you can't come to me because you feel weird about talking to mom and dad, this is a person that you can talk to that I trust and that I know is watching out. And then talk to that person. Hey, by the way, I've told my young people that you're my trusted adult person. So here's the things I need you to tell me, okay, right? That's legit, right? I just had that conversation with my best friend. I said, you know, yeah, I'm going to be your daughter's trusted adult person. And she's like, you have to tell me about sex things, drug things. You know, I'll go, I'm like, done, okay? Otherwise, we can, and again, back to that secret. Secrets. What kind of secrets are okay? Who is it okay to have secrets with? What does that mean, right? I know that you probably are feeling overwhelmed by this point. There's a lot of things to talk about, but there are a lot of things to talk about, okay, for sure. And then finally, start talking about romantic relationships. I know you're like, but they're 11. We're not going to talk about dating, you know? You should talk about it because they're talking about it, you know? And there's a lot of pressure in our culture to be in relationships and to be talking about these things in middle school. And when I first start talking to them, I say, I know you guys are dating, but you're not dating because y'all ain't going nowhere. Nobody has a car. You're like 11. Like, where are you going together? You're hanging out, okay? What's that mean, right? Netflix and chill, right? What's that mean? Is it really chill or is it chill, right? So start to have those. And again, back to the videos, lots of great ones out there. So this next one is Consent Explained by Amaze. So I've talked about Amaze a lot, so we're going to show you one of the Amaze videos.
Well, sure, that's a great idea. But I'm not sure if Nicole is into horror films. Let me just ask her. Nicole! Hey, Nicole! You want to watch Werewolf vs. Zombie Vampire 6? Okay. Well, she didn't say no, so count us in. Sexual consent means that both people are actively willing to engage in a particular sexual behavior and express their consent by saying, yes, that's okay with me. But just because someone consents to engage in one kind of behavior does not mean that they have agreed to engage in another. Anyone has the right to change their mind about what they do or do not want to do at any time. This means that even if you are engaging in sexual acts with a person and they change their mind, you must stop and respect that person's wishes. Just because someone doesn't say no, it doesn't mean that they have said yes or given their consent. If a person is under the influence of drugs or alcohol, they are legally not able to give consent. Engaging in sexual behavior with someone who does not or cannot consent is sexual assault or rape. If you have been raped or sexually assaulted, please note that it is never your fault. It is also important to talk to a trusted adult about what has happened. Okay. Well, I guess next time we'll watch Love is in the Air 3. Okay, guys. Till next time. And don't forget to come and visit me at amaze.org or go to my YouTube channel to watch more. Bye.
I love her friend's face. It's my favorite. So Amaze has its own YouTube channel, and you know your young people spend a crap ton of time on YouTube, probably watching a lot of videos about making slime and other stupid things that they find exciting, which is fine. But if they can find good stuff there too that actually will make them internalize these messages, that's great. So feedback about the Amaze video. made for middle schoolers by middle schoolers. I actually met a young lady at Metro High School that's on Ohio State's campus, and she was one of the creators of these Amaze videos, which is pretty cool. So I like to tell them about it too, because it's an easy way for them to kind of watch things and take in these good messages. So why does alcohol make sex non-consensual? I'm sorry? It affects judgment, right? It impacts and it impairs us, makes us think we're making really awesome choices when in fact we might be making incredibly regrettable choices that we won't know until the next morning. And we go, oh, that was a poop choice, right? Oops. So it's important for young people to understand that. When I explain that, I don't say that means that drunk people are always raping each other. It just becomes a very gray area. And in terms of consent and sexual assault, I don't like gray areas, right? So I want to implore them. Also, I don't want our young people engaging in drug and alcohol practices, right? So it's good to discourage that altogether. So, hey, any other feedback? Good? Yeah. Okay, so rape talks, oh yeah, the difference between assault and rape. So assault is about crossing those body boundaries and touching in ways that are uncomfortable, and rape is about penetration of orifices, whether that is by penises or fingers or other instruments. It's about penetration, however slight, of orifices. So if we look at the actual technical definitions, that's the difference between the two things. So now that you know the definitions, many of you are thinking, oh, I've probably been sexually assaulted by someone, right? So it's about that unwanted sexual touching that crosses our boundaries. So super good question. All right, so let's look at high schoolers. Oh my. High school is fraught. Yes, my friend. Mm-hmm. Sure.
Pretty much grown, but in raising my children over the years, and I was raised in a multicultural family on the West Coast, and if a kid hit another kid, I was raised where adults would say, you don't do that. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, in the years that I've been raising my kids, there are a lot of families who say they need to work it out themselves. And culturally, you're saying, if a kid tells another kid, no, this is my body. Mm-hmm. I just find it that within our culture, parenting styles are very different. And we've lost friendships. For example, one of my children was purple nurpled. Told the person, stop, we've known that this particular child had some aggression issues, and we've had to come to the point where we're like, you've given this a cute name, and I was curious to know what you know about the purple nurple and why that's somehow considered okay.
It's not, definitely not. Not in my book, because that's about crossing a boundary. I've now said no to you, that hurts and it's uncomfortable, and I've asked you to stop and you've continued to cross my boundary, and that is assaulting. So I find it in these situations, it has to be black and white in that way. So nobody crosses anyone else's boundaries. And I think it's okay to say people come from all different families, and not everybody teaches correct information, because everybody should be teaching not to cross boundaries in the nurple or whatever other cutesy name they're going to come up for boundary crossing is not okay. And back in the day, we believed all manner of things, like 16 Candles, where raping someone was totally okay and allowable because she was drunk. Who cares? Pass her on. But it's 2019. And it's time to change the conversation. And that is the beauty of something like the Me Too movement, bringing all of this to light so that we can talk about boundary crossing. And it's not ever okay, and it's not okay in your family, and it shouldn't be okay in anyone's family. And I'm sorry that you've lost friendships over it, but I applaud you for standing behind your child and doing what's right for them. So, yeah, and so that's my hard stance on that. Not okay to cross boundaries, so, yeah. Anybody else? All right, high school days. So I think there's an assumption, again, back women are raped and they're raped by men and it's heterosexual and that's, you know, those are the only people that we have to talk to about sexual assault. That just isn't correct, right? So most victims of sexual assault are women. The perpetrators oftentimes are men. But it's likely that my high school students are getting all kinds of pressure to actually be sexual and to try to coerce and these are the things that you should do. And it is probably also likely there are plenty of young ladies saying, come on, these are the things I want you to do. These are my, you know, boundaries that it's cool for you to cross, you know, and it's confusing messages for them. And so I think it's important to talk to them in a pointed way about those confusing messages. Here's things you're going to hear out in the world, right? You're going to hear, this is what I had a middle schooler tell me recently. It's healthy for boys to have a lot of sex because it makes them more manly or it makes them better men or something. And I was like, I said, what about girls? He's like, oh, they're sluts. Okay, so this was in one of my suburban middle schools. So already we have the society giving us weird messages, right? So as parents, it's important for us to straighten out those messages and to talk pointedly to young men and young women in similar ways about consent. So alcohol ruins everything. I think we clearly saw how that changes things and changes conversations. You know, I have tried very hard to not talk too much about Judge Kavanaugh and Dr. Ford because that is a divisive conversation, and I'm not here to get in any divisive arguments with anybody. But I do want to say that at the day and time that those things occur, the idea of having parties where people got wasted and we had sex, whether that person said yes or no, was probably fairly pervasive. And again, looking at those movies, we understand why, right? That gives us a frame for why these things happen. Alcohol makes everything mucky and dirty, and it's incredibly tough to sort things out. So I know as part of P.E.R.C, you guys stand behind the idea of like not being the parents that are providing alcohol at parties to other people's children. And so I would ask you to please in no way be that person who's saying, yes, it's cool to drink here and get drunk here, because when we add that extra layer, there's all kinds of boundaries that can be crossed really quick and easily without any malicious intent, right? I'm sure I crossed boundaries when I've been drunk with people that haven't wanted to be touched, and that's not okay. Clearly, I teach this for a living, right? But alcohol makes everything mucky, and I would just ask you guys to please be aware of that and talk to your kids about drugs and alcohol. And when, you know, my students oftentimes will ask me about like the date rape drug or Rohypnol or whatever, and I tell them, really, the date rape drug in America is alcohol. Right? That's the easiest way to cross someone's boundary. That's what I want you to be concerned about, and why, again, that muckies things up, why it makes sex non-consensual, and why it can give us really confusing ideas about bodies. Okay. And then finally, talk about the future. Your future relationships, what your expectations are for them, what college is going to look like. Has anybody watched The Hunting Ground on Netflix? Oh, don't watch it. Okay, maybe don't. It's all about sexual assault on college campuses and how pervasive it is related to alcohol. Again, think about if you went to college. Think about your college experiences. Think about how alcohol played a part. Think about that boundary crossing. Alert them to the fact that some of these things are going to occur. My friend in the back, I can barely see. It's called The Hunting Ground. And it's about, yes, it's about sexual assault on college campuses. Many college campuses actually require that freshmen take a course about consent and alcohol use and things of that nature. That only goes so far, you know. So we actually have to also support those messages and make sure they are aware that sexual assault is incredibly rampant and pervasive on college campuses, and to get educated about how alcohol plays a part in that, okay? All right, this is my final video for you guys, and we're getting close to the end of time. I show this always to both my middle schoolers and high schoolers. I think this is the easiest way to talk about this very multi-layered issue of consent, but it's called Consent Like Tea. You can find it on YouTube. I do have to let you guys know there is a clean and a not clean version. The not clean version says the F word a few times. I know we've never heard that language before, but I do want to make you aware if you're watching this with a student that you might want to pick a clean version.
If you're still struggling with consent, just imagine instead of initiating sex, you're making them a cup of tea. You say, hey, would you like a cup of tea? And they go, oh my God, I would love a cup of tea, thank you. Then you
That's the consent, right?
You say, hey, would you like a cup of tea? And they're like, I'm not really sure. Then you could make them a cup of tea, or not, but be aware they might not drink it. And if they don't drink it, then, and this is the important part, don't make them drink it. Just because you made it doesn't mean you are entitled to watch them drink it. And if they say no thank you, then don't make them tea at all. Just don't make them tea. Don't make them drink tea. Don't get annoyed at them for not wanting tea. They just don't want tea, okay? They might say, yes, please, that's kind of you. And then when the tea arrives, they actually don't want the tea at all. Sure, that's kind of annoying as you've gone all the effort of making the tea, but they remain under no obligation to drink the tea. They did want tea, now they don't. Some people change their mind in the time that it takes to boil the kettle, brew the tea, and it's okay for people to change their mind. And you are still not entitled to watch them drink it. And if they're unconscious, don't make them tea. Unconscious people don't want tea. And they can't answer the question, do you want tea? Because they're unconscious. Okay, maybe they were conscious when you asked them if they wanted tea. And they said yes. But in the time it took you to boil the kettle, brew the tea, and add the milk, they are now unconscious. You should just put the tea down. Make sure the unconscious person is safe. And this is the important part again. Don't make them drink the tea. They said yes then, sure, but unconscious people don't want tea. If someone said yes to tea, started drinking it, and then passed out before they finished it, don't keep on pouring it down their throat. Take the tea away. Make sure they're safe, because unconscious people don't want tea. Trust me on this. If someone said yes to tea around your house last Saturday, that doesn't mean they want you to make them tea all the time. They don't want you to come around to their place unexpectedly and make them tea and force them to drink it going, but you wanted tea last week. Or to wake up to find you pouring tea down their throat going, but you wanted tea last night. But if you can understand how completely ludicrous it is to force people to have tea when they don't want tea, and you're able to understand when people don't want tea, then how hard is it to understand it when it comes to sex? Whether it's tea or sex, consent is everything. And on that note, I'm going to go make myself a cup of tea.
And my kids inevitably will say, what does that mean? And I say, that's open to interpretation. And I once had a student say, so if they pass out while you're having sex, you can't just keep going? And in my head, I'm like, oh my God. But my social worker face, I was like, do unconscious people want tea? And he was like, no. I'm like, okay, there's your answer, right? So I, again, love that video, have showed it a bazillion times. I just think it's a really easy way to talk about consent with older middle school and high school folks. So feedback about the video, questions? Straightforward? Yeah, okay. And why would somebody be passed out? Alcohol, exactly right. So back to those conversations about alcohol and being safe, right? Absolutely. So last but not least, you guys need to model consent to your kiddos. Again, children learn what they live. I cannot stress that enough. We don't always take in the messages that we hear our parents say now and then, but we sure do model how they live their life. So I want you guys to recognize your own experiences and your own discomfort around sexual assault and consent. That's your job to deal with on your own. Don't give that to your kids, okay? So we do have to think about our feelings surrounding that. Shut down rape jokes, okay? I know that sounds simplistic and you might say, well, of course I would, but we've all been in situations where people have said things and we go, oh, ooh, ugh, yuck, right? So if they see you doing that, they go, oh, that's inappropriate, and I should model that same behavior. And again, encouraging that bystander intervention. The idea of if you see something, say something. It's not tattling, it's called reporting. And reporting can actually keep someone safe, and that's different than tattling. And again, back to that elementary school kind of conversations, what's the difference between the two, and how do we know? So, and you ask too, sorry, again, this does not minimize your power as a parent, it's modeling consent, right? Hey, can mom borrow your, whatever, your soap or your hair gel or whatever it is? And if they say no, then you go, I bought it, I'm using it anyway, right? No, just kidding, just kidding. But when you do that, you can say, hey, look, mom is practicing with you. Remember we talked about consent, so I'm gonna ask your permission, and you get to say yes or no, and I'm gonna listen, and then I'm gonna respond, maybe respectfully. We'll see how we're feeling today, right? Because this is practice for mom and dad too, right? Absolutely. Normalize bodies and differences. Use that inclusive language. I had a conversation with my P.E.R.C friends actually when we were talking about this presentation, and we were saying that if we have heard our parents talk in very heteronormative terminology, maybe if I'm a young person who is gay or queer, I might not talk about when I get married to a man or when I have a husband or things like that, and that might be like, ooh, that might give me the message that it's not okay for me to be who I am. And that is also a conversation to have with these high schoolers and older folks as we talk about the formation of these relationships. So please use words that are inclusive, because when you don't, that might give them an idea that, it's sort of not okay to be who they are, to express those sorts of things. So, and watch your words in general, okay? They're watching you, they're listening. Even though they have their headphones on, and you're like, oh, they're ignoring me. They are listening, and they are watching, and they are modeling their behavior from your behavior. And so far, so good, parents. I want you to tell yourself that you're doing a great job. I know this feels cumbersome, but I believe in you. They have you, and gosh, isn't that awesome? You are an amazing advocate for your kiddos, so keep doing what you're doing. So we have about 4 minutes left before the end. Here's some of my resources and some of my books. But anybody have any questions for me about anything that we talked about today, or any reflections, any final thoughts for us? Anybody want to sing The Boss of My Body? No?
You'll be up front then?
I'll be here. I'll be here to answer any questions. Absolutely. Yes? Hold on 1 second. Yeah.
I'm in the medical field, and I have a lot of friends or friends of friends, or my kids' friends, parents, they'll ask me about the HPV vaccination.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we took a medical approach talking to our kids, and I let him consent to it as well. Like, he had the information, but I felt like if I'm having him get something that affects him, but I gave details. So when kids come, like, do you have that situation? I've had a lot of parents, and I said to your point, of course, they're an individual decision, but there's a lot of misconception
About the HPV vaccine. Sometimes I do get parents who feel like somehow by vaccinating their young people, it gives them the idea that it's okay for them to go forth and be sexual, which is not the case. So the way that I frame the HPV vaccine is that it is an anti-cancer vaccine. And so as parents, we want to try to give our young people everything we can, including a chance to not develop incredibly dangerous cancers. And this is just one more layer of that. So we don't even have to speak to it as, yes, these cancers can be sexually passed. Yes, it can pass through oral, vaginal, anal, close genital contact. But again, if your kid asks a star, answer the question about the star. Don't talk about the whole solar system, right? Because we go down rabbit holes as parents, and we're like, oh, and then this, and then this, and then, okay, and they're like, click, we're done. We heard the first 4 things that you said, and now we're like glazed over and back into YouTube, slime land. So I would say to frame it in that way, anti-cancer vaccine versus this somehow being permissive. Because let's be real, just because I talk to you about llamas doesn't make you want to go out and buy llamas tomorrow, right? Just because I talk to you about sex or sexually related things does not make young people become sexual. Stop believing that. That is fake news. Pretend, okay? In the same way that vaccine does not give permission to be sexual. So, but I think that's an incredibly valuable conversation to have with our young people, though. Yes, yes, yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Good conversations indeed. Thank you for that. Anything else in our last few moments together? Was this okay? Was this helpful to you guys? Yeah, thank you so much. I was like dying with anxiety earlier today that this would be what people needed. So my hope is to keep our kids safe. I want that too. And safety comes through knowledge that gives us power. Yes.
And I just want to say thank you so much for also pointing out that it's not just straight males that need to be attentive and
Absolutely.
watch their behavior. So thank you.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. That's really important stuff. Yeah, of course.
And again, I think it's fabulous presentation, so thank you. And the other thing, at our church we do safety training for adult volunteers.
Oh, great.
And one of the things that they talk about is also be aware that there can be abuse child to child or
100%.
child to child. So
Yeah.
when having these conversations with young ones or middle school ones, even high school, that they understand that abuse isn't necessarily an older individual to a younger. It can also be the same age.
That's perfect. Thank you. I'm going to write that into my notes to say tonight, so thank you. That's absolutely correct, because that is true. We do see that as well, so thank you. Yeah. Anything else? Yes, thank you, guys.
Great interactive conversation back and forth. And also, we have a program this evening tonight at 7 o'clock here. So get the word out so we can spread the word to other parents. So, and remember our survey as well, too. Thank you very much.